in mind always that doing valuable every efforts in the areas of those things on those future generations to build their confidence. They continue to strive.
I just gave one to the VSO over there. When I stopped in, they saw they had a library of books. The front very good we used to have a sporting goods store down in Lansing.
Okay.
It was his memoirs.
To start us off for our for the new year, we have a former guest who is now a new member. Lauren, could you come up, please? Morning. Lauren, you are experiencing a new adventure as you become a Rotarian. There are many things you will be learning about Rotary and yourself related to service and fellowship. Most important is the objective of Rotary International, which is to encourage and foster the ideal of service as a basis of worthy enterprise. This ideal is a commitment to service above self and, of course, the four-way test. The key to success and satisfaction of being a Rotarian is centered on participation. Make Rotary an important part of your life through our meetings, service projects, serving on club committees, and attending other clubs, meetings, and events, and district and international functions. We are happy and honored to welcome you as a member of our club. Come join us in doing good in our community and the world, and feel the impact of Rotary. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay. We have a couple of events coming up this month. Tomorrow, as we are trying to build upon the opportunity that we have in Skipback with the Skipback satellite, there will be a happy hour tomorrow at 5:30 at Time Out in Skipback. And the purpose of a little bit more of a purpose this month. Maybe Frank, if you want to, do you want to talk a little bit about that, or I can talk about it? Actually, I thought you were getting up to speed. Okay.
Yeah, we have an alternative, the concept that we're going to discuss it a little more. We're going to still have a happy hour, but a few of the satellite people that are still left coming. We're going to discuss what to do, and we're looking at it as an alternative meeting. Really, it's just going to be this club. From the satellite will be an alternative meeting. So for any of us who can't make it area away or something, and you want to come there, that counts as a meeting too. So they will do everything we do. We'll go over the whatever we do here, that we're going to use that program there, so they don't have to look for other speakers and stuff. And when Dan's again recorded on YouTube, we can just on a computer just go through what the speaker that was here or something, and we can get that all fixed. That's our idea. We're going to see what the people think of it. But besides that, it's just a regular happy hour too. We're going to go be happy. Yeah.
Thank you, Frank. Yeah, remember the reason why I think the satellite was initiated was for some people might not appreciate as much getting up this early to have a meeting this early in the morning. So we wanted to have an alternative for some folks who still wanted to participate in Rotary, but wanted to meet at another time during the day. On the 10th, January 10th, the district is having a Grow Club membership virtual program, and that will be from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. These events are events that you can register for on the district website. They'll send you I think they send you an invitation that you can put on your calendar at home as a reminder. January 24th, there's Club Runner Intermediate Training, and that is virtual as well, and that is from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. And on the 31st, there's a grant certification webinar. If you want to become certified for grants, that is at 6:30 p.m. on the 31st. Does anyone have any other events or anything else that they want to make sure that they want to mention for the calendar for January? You know, looking ahead, we're going to be, I think, planning to have a bowling event in March. So I think that committee is still looking for committee members if anyone's interested in helping with that event. We're also looking for, I think, an organization that we can have as, you know, the organization that we're raising funds for that. So if you have any ideas about that, please let the committee know. I know Val's on the committee, so you can let her know if you have any thoughts about that. For example, we just gave a nice check to the fire department, but that was about half of what they need to outfit one fireman. So there, that could be an opportunity for us as well. Of course, we've got a lot of things going on in the Department of Health this spring. So if anything else you have any thoughts about, please feel free to share those. Anything else? All right, we're going to go right into Rotary Trivia and get us started on a good note.
Oh, you go to sleep now.
Give a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's that guy.
Guys, live from the Franconia Cafe is another exciting edition of Rotary Trivia. Join us as one lucky contestant will play to win a fabulous grand prize by showing us what they know about Rotary. I'm your announcer, Larry Moss, here with your host, Bill Jenkins.
Hey, morning, Larry. Hey, always, let's get started by telling the audience about today's grand prize.
Well, I saw a direct attention to our sports person, Laura Miller. Today's contestants are playing for an 11-ounce white ceramic mug featuring the Rotary International Master Brand signature logo and World Understanding and Peace on one side and the four-way test on the other. Perfect for coffee, tea, cocoa, and with every sip you can help be truthful, fair, a better friend, beneficial goal. All one stores, retail value of today's grand prize. It's a couple of bucks.
Well, you know, that mug is a good pick-me-up. I have one just like it. And I was feeling kind of lonely and kind of unnoticed. I glued it to the roof of my car, and now people wave at me all the time. Anyway, how about introducing today's contestant?
Today's contestant selected random from our studio audience moments ago. This Rotarian has all the skill and knowledge required to win a prize worth a drink, two, or making that from. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm round of applause to Chuck Hackenberger.
Come on up, my way to the fruit got here.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's always good.
Okay.
Here we go. Use my professional skills through Rotary to mentor young people, help those with special needs, and improve people's quality of life in my community and in the world. It's part of the four-way test, Rotarian Code of Conduct, the object of Rotary, the Rotary rules.
I'm going to go with B.
Wow.
Sound good?
Okay, yeah, final answer.
Yeah, final answer.
You are impressive. Okay.
He's hungry.
All right, that's right. That's good. Let's see what it's got. There are no Rotary rules. That, and of course, oh, you're a beautiful mug. But as always, but wait, there's more. January is vocational service month, hence the question. Vocational service calls on Rotarians to empower others by using their unique skills and expertise to address community needs and help others discover new professional opportunities and interests. And if you do go to the next slide, the Rotary Code of Conduct, obviously there's 5 things there, but there again, they use your professional skills, Rotary, as we mentioned earlier. But as I also found, we talk about the object of Rotary, as you keep going back through. Our next slide, please. There in the object, it says high ethical standards in business and professions, the recognition of the worthiness of all useful occupations and the dignifying of each Rotarian's occupation as an opportunity to serve society. So it really is all throughout, and even the 4-way test, hence the prize.
Yeah.
Let's face it.
So I could have picked any of the answers.
We almost could have, but that's the one that had that call.
Yeah.
But anyway, you figure this guy saved his business.
Yeah.
The pot business,
Mhm.
4-way test, so it all counts. Chuck, you are a winner. Take home the mug, put it on the roof of your car.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just gonna glue it a little bit so it kind of rattles around a little bit. That'll really.
Yeah, and be sure to fill it with coffee too. That'll do
Yeah.
wonders for the finish.
Before you put it on the roof, fill it with coal.
Chuck, congratulations. Okay, so, that is a great thing to think about. We all had different vocations and things that we do within our community and things that we do at work. Maybe we have special skills that we just do as like things that we like to do at home. So those are opportunities or things that we can think about of ways that we can share our knowledge with the community to help others within our community. Okay, next up is our guest speaker today, Mr. Walt Johnson. Walt is a local historian in the area, and he's going to tell us some great things about the history of our area. Welcome, Walt.
Very much. It's a challenge again, getting up this early in the morning. I taught school at Souderton District for about 38 years, 25 years at Indian Valley, doing the junior high school and coaching soccer for about 17 years, coaching baseball for 22 years there. I moved on to the high school for 13 years. So I've traveled this road across here 113 quite a bit, especially the last 13 years of my teaching, which was, I retired some time ago. Some of you had children or grandkids, maybe. That's what I met one person and I said, "Hey, what are you doing these days?" He said, "Oh, I'm retired." I said, "You were in my class." It makes me feel that much older, but I'm glad to be here. Since I retired from teaching mathematics, geometry, when they moved the 9th grade to the high school, some 30 years ago, I went with them to the old high school over in Telford, Souderton, Telford, and I taught there then for about 12 years. I taught 1 year earlier, but I enjoyed my teaching experience here at Souderton. It worked out well and met a lot of nice people. I'm here to talk also about history because since I retired, I'm involved in the Skippack Historical Society, and we try to do some research of the area, and here we are in Franconia, Pennsylvania. The word Franconia, where did Franconia come from? It's actually brought here by the Germans. I researched that and found out that it was not called Germany at the time. In the 7th century, 8th century, it was more of an area of Europe where people lived, and it was invaded by the Franks. And they came across the name of Franconia for an area up in Bavaria. And when the Germans came over, this is along the Rhine River, when they came over to Philadelphia to William Penn's religious freedom, a lot of them focused in Germantown, and then of course out to Skippack, and eventually to Franconia here, which is at one time was quite German, and they persisted in using the German language a little longer than a lot of other areas in the colonies. So German was one of the things, and Franconia came from a town in Bavaria, and is similar to Skippack. Skippack, if you read the sign going into the township, it says it's an Indian term meaning stagnant water or muddy pool. I grew up reading that thing and I thought, yeah. In recent years, over the last 30, 40 years, with more research,
we found out that a more logical explanation, because sometimes history is not 100% guaranteed. A more logical explanation would be that the Germans, once again, who came over from the Palatinate and from the Rhine River, brought with them the name of Schibach. Schibach meant pushed upstream. It was the name of a village up on the mountainside. And they thought, hey, you know, we pushed our way from Germantown up the Schuylkill, up the Perkiomen, up the Skippack. It might have been how they got to this area between the Perkiomen and the Skippack Creeks, which was a desirable area outside of Germantown for those that were ready to do some farming. So they came up here, and we now think, I don't argue with the people that think it's an Indian term. That's okay. I apologize for the word Indian. I grew up learning history and we used the word Indian. Nowadays it's going to be indigenous people or the Lenape tribe, the Delaware tribe. So apologize. Get me and myself in trouble sometimes. I think I slept. But Schibach now is thought of as being a term, again, brought over by the Germans from where they originally lived. But they came to Pennsylvania. The name Pennsylvania. Most of you probably think you know where the name Pennsylvania came from. It goes back to William Penn. William Penn's father was the head admiral of the British Navy. And Britain and the British Empire depended on a good navy to protect the sea lanes and keep it safe. They couldn't travel across land to get to other areas. I mean, they're on an island. So before they had planes, before they had trains and all that stuff, they pretty much were isolated unless they had a good boat to take them over to mainland Europe, or other countries. So they needed a good passageway on the seas, which would accommodate the British ships. And Admiral Sir William Penn was in charge of that for many, many years. And William Penn grew up in this aristocratic lifestyle, but when he was about 18, 20 years old, he heard some Quakers, those people that were a Society of Friends, preaching, and he became a Quaker. And his family was very upset with him, leaving the aristocratic lifestyle to become a Quaker. We persecute Quakers. We put them in jail. They're not supposed to meet secretly in their religious settings. Everybody's supposed to be part of the Church of England, And his father and his mother were very upset with him leaving. You should not do that. Don't become a Quaker. Well, he did. He was thrown in jail more than once or twice, along with friends, because they were meeting as a group of Quakers, or they were out on the street talking to people about their Society of Friends. And that was not looked upon very favorably by the government or the king at times. So he was in jail from time to time. Now, I have to point out that when he got the land grant, now his father being the head admiral, worked for the king and for the country of England for quite a few years, and they owed him 16,000 pounds of sterling. What the book said, 16,000 pounds of sterling was quite a large sum of money at the time. And of course, like some governments or some kings, they didn't have the money to pay out to pay their debts. So they owed the family, as Sir William Penn, William Penn's father, was nearing the end of his life. The family thought, let's resolve this thing and get paid what our father was owed. And they went and they tried to get paid, but there's no money here. So the result was that the King Charles I, now we have King Charles III, just in the last few months, but King Charles I said, we've got just the idea. William Penn, you're sort of a friend of us. We know you and you know us. And sorry about putting you in prison so much. But he said, we have some land over in the New World that we will, turn over to you. You can be the proprietor. You don't call him the owner because there are some people already living here in this area. And they sort of had land that they thought they bought from somebody else. So William Penn is proprietor. Now, 95% of the ground is unoccupied, except for the indigenous people that are here. But they didn't think they owned it either, because people don't own land. God has provided it for our use. We use it for a year or two or three, and we'll move on to better hunting grounds, that kind of thing. So they were, at least the Lenape Indians, were the type of Indian that would move from section to section as necessary. They didn't own the property, and they said, we can't sell it to you, but we'll accept any kind of little trinkets that you have for us. And William Penn did that, and in a very positive, constructive way, in cooperating with the indigenous people. I have to point out that Pennsylvania was one of the colonies that had almost no Indian uprisings or massacres or that kind of thing. Now, I can't talk about the French and Indian Wars, that's after William Penn's time, and that's a whole new issue when you talk about French and Indian Wars, because the Indians were trying to pick which side to fight on, they fought against themselves, and all sorts of things were happening. But during William Penn's lifetime, there was no real incident with Indians being uprising against the white people or white people against the indigenous people. But anyhow, in getting the name for this new colony or the new land, William Penn said, I think it would be good to call it Sylvania. It means woods, area or land of woods in the Latin language, Sylvania. The king said, no, we need something better than that. How about Pennsylvania? And William Penn, son, meeting with the king, said, no, it doesn't have to be named after me. I'm not the greatest person around. I don't need that kind of acclamation or glory or anything. And the king said, well, it's not being named after you. It's named after your father. He's the one that served us all those years and made the seas safe. So technically, fine-tuning your information, it is named after Sir William Penn, which is William Penn's father, who worked for the king and for the government of England for quite a few years in a very positive way. When I was growing up,
Go Navy.
when I was growing up, we learned about the British Honduras, we were French Guiana, British Guiana, all the names of the territories or islands that were sort of taken over by France or Spain or even Dutch. We have Dutch Guiana at times in our history of types of countries in South America or in the islands. All of those now sort of wandered away. The countries got their own independence and they separated from the country. But back in the time of Sir William Penn, he was very important in going around in various parts of the country trying to claim land for England so that they could expand their empire and get more and more produce or products coming into the country and making more and more things. So a little history on where we are in Franconia, Pennsylvania, and I come from Skippack. I'd like to talk briefly about some other local historical facts, and that involves Washington, General George Washington. He camped in Skippack. He was camped before the Battle of Germantown, after the Battle of Brandywine, which is in all the books and all that kind of thing. Washington came up, Chester County, came into Montgomery County and spent 3 or 4 days up in Schwenksville at the Pennypacker House and also at the Greeley Farm. He then came down to Skippack. Now, this is not necessarily in most textbooks, but it is in the correspondence of George Washington. And that's where I got some of the information that you don't normally come across in textbooks or history of the Revolutionary War. We didn't have any battles in Franconia. In fact, I don't have any campsites that are real close. The closest campsite I have is down on Wampole Road. I'll get to that in a second. That was rather important. That was after the Battle of Germantown. Before the Battle of Germantown, let me read. Washington wrote a letter to the Congress, and it said, Monday, September 29, at Pennypacker Mills. I shall move the army 4 or 5 miles lower down today, from whence we may reconnoiter and fix upon a proper situation at such distance from the enemy as will enable us to make an attack should we see proper opening, or stand upon the defensive till we obtain further reinforcements. They had to rethink what they were doing. They lost at Brandywine. They were trying to look like they are a worthwhile army, but they still, of course, haven't gotten to Valley Forge. So they haven't been drilled to be an army. They're just sort of a lot of regiments that get together as a continental army and fight sort of individually. You know, regiment from New Jersey or from Connecticut or from Pennsylvania would get together and fight British, which was sort of an uphill battle at times. But I would like to point out that he was at Schwenksville. He did move down at Skippack. He writes a letter. He made his headquarters at the Joseph Smith Farm from September the 29th to October the 2nd. This is 1777. You remember Valley Forge, that was later in December of that same year. They sort of stayed there for the winter, as was common. They didn't usually fight too much in wintertime. Another article from the Skippack area when he was at the Joseph Smith house was when he wrote headquarters at Skippack, September the 30th, 1777. General Greene lost at New Hanover camp a brass pistol. New Hanover was up near Pottstown, Pottsgrove Manor represents that. Both stock and barrel are marked with an HK. Any person who has found it will return it to the general and he will receive $20. That is a lot of money, but it was a pistol that was given from Henry Knox to General Greene somewhere in their travels a month or 2 or 3 before. And General Greene would like to have it back. He sort of had lost it or misplaced it. So there's a notice, I don't know if he ever got it back, but it was a notice that Washington was in Skippack at the Joseph Smith house. In fact, we have something a little more solidifying the fact that he was there. We have a receipt of when Washington stayed with Joseph Smith. Jacob Smith was the grandfather. Joseph Smith was operating farm. And Joseph Smith had 2 sons that were part of the army. One of them got wounded and eventually died from the Battle of Germantown. And the other one, serving under one of the generals from Pennsylvania, was captured and became a captive from Battle of Germantown. Not killed at that time, but I don't have any information of what happened to the other son. But Washington felt comfortable staying there. He picked certain areas to stay so that he was not in the middle of spies, because there were spies against our patriotic cause. They were loyalists, and there were quite a few sometimes around the Philadelphia area and a lot of the different areas providing information to the British. That's another topic of why there were so many loyalists in our area. But the farmers liked to go into Philadelphia and get gold and silver coinage, whereas at this time, if they went in and talked to some of the patriotic causes, they got paper currency. And paper currency is nothing more than a piece of paper that says, oh, $2 bill or $20 bill or whatever. And was there anything to back it up? In those early days of our country, we didn't have the best financial setup, let's say, to guarantee money in the bank. So some of the farmers around here preferred gold and silver rather than paper money, but that's different. While he was with Joseph Smith, Washington used a gammon, that's a special kind of pork that's cured the right way, a quarter of a veal, 1 ham, 18 containers of butter, 9 gallons of milk, 15 eggs, bread, apple pies, cabbage, potatoes, chickens, candles, and paper. All of it was itemized. Washington liked to reimburse the person that he stayed with, you know, cooperating, providing a place for him to sleep. His generals would sometimes meet in the area or close by. Washington preferred not being in the middle of the encampment. It was a little more secretive if he was away and not in the middle of where all the activity was, and it was a little more easy. It was easier to get the generals together and have private discussions as to what their plans were, so that it wouldn't spread out to some of the soldiers who would sell the information to the British, or who knows what was going on. There was a lot of traitors either way. Back during the Revolution, they had a hard time secretly keeping their plans together. So, but they did plan the Battle of Germantown for the most part in Skippack when he was there for those 4 days. In fact, the last day they were there, oh, I got to read this list. This is on October the 1st. It's been there now. This is the 3rd day. No more fences to be burnt on any pretense whatever. This is a notice that went out to the generals, and they were supposed to share it with their soldiers. If unavoidable necessity compels us to do it, license must first be obtained from me, Commander-in-Chief. It was a problem for farmers in the vicinity of the encampment that their lands were quickly stripped of fence, rails. I mean, if you have 10,000, we had 10,000 soldiers plus Washington and the lead generals. were camped in Skippack area. And that night, if they wanted to build a fire to cook their meal, you got 10,000 soldiers going out to find dead firewood around. There's only so much in the forest and down trees. You can't cut down a new tree and try to burn it. You know, you got to have some. And rails, split rails are perfect. I mean, put one on the fire. When it burns in half, you put the other two halves on. It takes probably the whole night just for one of the big split rails. But they were notorious, or they were known to steal those rails as firewood. They also would steal chickens and grain and straw and hay, whatever they could get their hands on. Pig, if it was available. They had good eating that night, at least their division did. So we have verification through the correspondence of Washington that he was in the Skippack area for 4 days before the Battle of Germantown. After they went in, that's another story. I won't get into that, but then they retreated up the Skippack Pike. And some of them went as far as Schwenksville. There's a mass burial of Schwenksville. And I didn't mean to talk this much about the revolution, but it is in this area. We have the fact that the Liberty Bell during the Revolutionary War, the Liberty Bell was taken out of Philadelphia because they didn't want the British to melt it down for cannonballs and for, you know, ammunition. It was brought up, and most of you know this, if you've eaten at the Rising Sun Hotel, brought up Allentown Road, stopped there at the Rising Sun Hotel, which was there at the time, and then taken on up towards Bethlehem for safety and security. The Liberty Bell was transported. That's the one thing that really went right past us right here. But other than that, I don't have record of soldiers actually having encampments here. They did have one down on Walpole Road, Tillmanson Township, after the Battle of Germantown. In fact, they were there for like 8 days. From October the 9th through the 16th. They stayed at Frederick Wombold's house. They don't have a historical society down in Tillmanson. So there isn't a whole lot put out, but there is a plaque down there representing it. Most of you probably haven't seen it, don't know where it is. If you go across Wombold Road, turn right on Detweiler as if you're going to Doc Woods, Christopher Dock up there. Detweiler Road, and then make a left on Delp, okay? It will take you into a cul-de-sac behind Nick Floor there. And under one of the trees near a parking lot, there is a plaque which says George Washington, General George Washington, stayed here with Frederick Wombold from October the 9th to October the 16th. That's considerably a long time because they were trying to regroup after being defeated again at Germantown. Washington lost more battles than he won. So if you grade him on victories, like everybody grades the Eagles on their victories, well, he would not get a high grade. However, he knew how to retreat, escape, whatever you want to call it, so that they could live and fight another day. And because of that, the revolution, of course, was not over in 2 or 3 years. It lasted until 1781. And that was not totally the end either, but close to it. But he did manage to keep the troops together. He managed to try to get supplies as necessary, although they were meager at times. But not everybody has a document like this that verifies that Washington stayed there. Like, go past certain places, Washington slept here. You know, I asked a few of the historical societies and everything, do you have some kind of written record or common, letter, correspondence that he signed noting that he was here? No, but we have the house. Skippack Historical Society is just the opposite. We don't have the house. The state tore it down. Some of you older like myself might remember there was an Evansburg Dam project in the area, or maybe you've heard about it in the past, 1960s. I get my years mixed up here sometimes. In the 1960s, they thought, oh, good, we'll have a big dam down here along Skippack Creek for a water reserve, or a water reserve. Some of us thought, not me, my parents thought that it might be for a backup supply for Philadelphia water. Then other people said, no, they're planning a nuclear plant up near Pottstown, and they'll probably need it for that. There was some kind of uncertainty as to why they needed this dam, but it was going to be a dam that would wipe out Ridge Pike. It would wipe out Germantown Pike and also Skippack Pike. After debating it for 3 or 4 years, they decided not to have it, and we now have Evansburg Park, state park. They never sold the land back to the people. They made them sell the land. Some 60 to 80 residences and farms were thrown out of the area. They couldn't stay there because the land's going to be flooded and you have to go elsewhere. So they used this eminent domain or something to make sure everybody left. Not the most friendliest type of invasion that happens, especially if you were one of the people owning one of those farms. Your family grew up there for 200 years and they're saying, you got to go somewhere else. And that's where our historical society in Skippack got started. These people that formed together, 30, 40 people, put a little money together and had a lawsuit trying to fight it. We got our start as a historical society trying to save the homes. They were not successful in saving the Joseph Smith house. That state came in one night, sort of took it down within a period of 2 days before they could get information to papers. And it was a little traumatic having that kind of thing happen right in front of your eyes. So I was not part of the society way back at that time. I was still teaching math at Indian Valley at that time. So but I bring that up and talk about it. One of the, okay, when I go too far, Mark told me 20 minutes. I'm probably close to 20 minutes right now. So let me know. I would like to talk about Henry Castle. Henry Castle was a neighbor of Frederick Wumble down on Wumble Road. He had a farm. In fact, there's still a Castle Road there. I think it's a road dead end because the turnpike came through, chopped it off, at various ends. But that's where the Army had camped. They camped in that big meadow behind what used to be Mainland. It now changed quite a few times, but off of Sumney Turnpike, there are quite a few soldiers. Not 10,000 now. They had dispersed, some of them still in Shrikesville, some of them at other locations, but there were quite a few soldiers in Lower Salford, Colemanson Township, while Washington was staying at Frederick Wumbold's house for those 8 days. The neighbor, Henry Castle, he had a farm. In his history of the Castle family, it has here the estimate of damage on the plantation of Henry Castle by the Army under the command of His Excellency General Washington between the 7th and the 16th of October, 1777. They used 696 fence rails at 25 cents a piece. Nowadays, they run what, $18 or something like that, or $22, depending on what you want, but 25 cents a piece. That means he is asking the Continental Congress to reimburse him 8 pounds, 14 shillings, and no pence. We whose names are undersigned at the request of the desired Henry Castle, he put it together. He has witnesses, have taken a strict and careful survey of the damage done to his plantation. So he has witnesses showing that he got robbed by the soldiers of 696 rails. They did a survey of the property and they were ready to qualify and testify in front of anybody that would like to question that. Given under our hands on this plantation in Tolmanson Township, the 23rd of October. So after the soldiers had moved out, just 7 days later, he's so irate that he puts this together, sends it off to the Continental Congress. Now they, of course, left Philadelphia. Our capital was Philadelphia. When the British came in, they moved out toward Lancaster and eventually to York, where they had their conference, their get-togethers. It was signed by witnesses, Frederick Wumble, he's the guy that Washington State with, Nicholas Schwenk. Some of you had ancestors in this area. You could relate to some of these names from here in the 1700s. John Lukens. And Mr. Castle, we don't know if he ever got reimbursed for what he put in there, but he put an official document in front of the Continental Congress saying, I'm one of those farmers that lost a lot of split rails. How do I put 696 rails back? That's just like that, a little hard to do. So farmers were not always in favor of what was going on in terms of the war. The fact that we had so many Mennonites, Schwenkfelders were a little in between. They were in the area too. But the Mennonites and the Brethren and Dunkards were not really fond of fighting and killing your enemy. The Bible says you're supposed to love. They had religious convictions of not really supporting the revolution as 100% as much as other people, because it was their father or their grandfather who came over to William Penn's Pennsylvania for religious freedom. And before they could get off this boat, they had to swear allegiance to the King of England. Okay, before we had our country, they had to swear allegiance because the sons of William Penn were afraid there's so many Germans coming in. Pretty soon we're going to be a German colony. They're talking German, they're publicizing all their stuff in German, and they wanted the people to know that it's England and William Penn who gave you this right. And these people in the revolution said, my grandfather gave an oath, and that was important to him, that he gave an oath to England. And here you guys want me to fight England? They gave us this good life. And some of the Mennonites did have a much better life coming to our country in Pennsylvania than they had back in Germany, where they were persecuted by various outside forces. Another story. I will stop there. Sometimes I stop and say, are there any questions? But I think some of you have jobs to do. Some of you, like myself, have another hour or two we could talk here about history. But I thank you for inviting me, but I don't want to overstay my visit because some of you have other jobs maybe to get to. When do you normally get out of here? Like 10 of 8? Now's the time. Bid you for a while. Thank you. Yes.
I have a question.
Okay, one quick question.
There is a house over in the Evansburg area that has some kind of plaque. It's the castle. I don't know if it's Henry Castle's.
Okay, there was a,
Do you know anything about that? It's real close to, not too far from Germantown Pike on the way over.
there's a Kaiser Mill that's right on Germantown Pike and Skippack Creek Road, all boarded up. We haven't gotten that access to that yet, owned by the state because it's in the park. There's a Custer Mill that is a little further in where Mill Road used to go across. Now, if you've ever walked in the park, they used to have a road across. Mill Road went from Skippack Township to Worcester, and one of the main roads. But it became, during the time the park took it over, it was dilapidated. They didn't repair it. Now it's a walking bridge. You can walk across. But the Custer Mill has a great history to it on the other side. One of the first pulling mills in our area. The Castleberry House,
Yes.
just in
and
Lower
there's
Providence.
There's a barn there.
Yes, and there's a plaque. And I asked them, Lower Providence Historical Society is struggling just like we are sort of struggling in Skippack for membership and younger faces, an awful lot of people that are part of our society have an interest in history because they're part of history. We're so old, you know, but we are getting more and more new members, which helps, and our membership is increasing each year. So it's nice to see that. And we're trying to preserve some of the stuff. The Castleberry House was closed down about 2 years ago. We got quite a few donations at our museum from the Castleberry House. Some of them very interesting, some of them big wagon wheels that are very picturesque, you know, for decoration inside the house or outside the house. So yes, I know what you're talking about. They said that Washington was there. I don't think he spent the night there because he did spend the night up towards Trap. Muhlenberg writes in his diaries that Washington came across from Parker Ford. He didn't leave or whatever, but he came across at Parker Ford. Then he went to Trap, and Muhlenberg, who was then the minister up there at Gus Lutheran, wrote in his diaries every day that the troops now went through town, and now they're leaving for Potsdam, up towards Reading. They were going to Reading for supplies, and on the way up, they found that the British went into Philadelphia, our capital, and now they have the capital. Back in the day, they thought if we take their capital, that means that's the end of the war. Well, it wasn't the end of the war, Revolutionary War. Our Congress had escaped, and they went out, and they're still operating in a different location. Washington said, okay, if you want to stay in the winter there, that's fine with us. We'll stay at Valley Forge. The war went on after that, even though they had our capital for a while, you know, all winter, and lived it up down there. They had high living style. And a lot of the people down there were loyalists and supported the British. But then a lot of people here, 1/3, they said, was loyalist in our area. Skippack and Franklin, 1/3 were loyalists, 1/3 were patriotic, ready for independence, and 1/3 or more were just wishing the war would get over and we could go on with our lives. Sort of aspects of what we have nowadays with some of the turmoil going on It's like solve your problems and let's move on with our life. I was reading a book just now about Abraham Lincoln's new one came out. Back during the Civil War, there were tremendous conflicts within families and within communities because of slavery and fighting against it, fighting against ourselves in the Civil War. So our country has gone through some ups and downs, and sometimes learning from the past helps us to work through our problems in the present, that kind of thing. So, yes.
Was General Washington ever at the Peter Wentz homestead?
Peter Wentz?
Yeah.
Yes. They tell you that he finalized the plans for Germantown there. Now, he was only there for a day and a half. Most of the plans, according to our communication, were done at Skippack. He actually divided up some of the troops. 1/3, no, not 1/3. There was a small division that went over towards Germantown Pike and went with Peter Muhlenberg down Germantown Pike towards Germantown. He took 2 other generals, Green and another one, took some troops over towards Morris Road. They met up with Bethlehem Pike, and Washington, with most of the troops, went down Skippack Pike. And on October the 4th, the morning of October the 4th, at daybreak, they were supposed to be fighting the British that they knew were down there at this encampment outside of Philadelphia, at Germantown. That morning, it was so foggy, almost worse than tonight. They didn't know even when the sun came up. Some of the ones that were way over here, a mile over here, and the ones that were a mile over there, they had a different view of the density of the fog. So some didn't even think it was daybreak. They didn't have their cell phones. They didn't have walkie-talkies or anything like that. So they had a bad start. Some of the troops went in and had the British on the run, but then other ones joined it because they heard the firing going on. Oh, good, let's jump in there. And they jumped in, fighting in the fog. They ended up fighting some of their own troops that has British. It was amazing.
That's what happened to General Nash in Virginia. He killed by friendly fire.
General Nash, the one that was killed
Yeah.
and died on a 40-foot road and buried right down. Yes, I have a whole story about him too. I can't get into that. Okay, I thank you again.
That was amazing, Walter. Thank you. I don't know if anybody's a metal detector enthusiast in the club, but I have a friend that I met in a business networking group who does a lot of metal detecting in the area. And from what he's told me, there's lots to be found. So get yourself a metal detector. Yeah. Sounds like we're going to have you back for the next chapter. Okay. Next, we'll go on to brags and sags. Anyone have any brags or sags for this week? Yes.
And also a request. First of all, I am supposed to be Lenny and I next week at the table, and I cannot be here because I'm working with it. And if anybody can offer to help Lenny Lord at the table, I appreciate it. And then I have a Brad in April. I'm going to Columbia with Rotary class. This will be my 25th edition with Rotary class. And as a result, I want to do sort of a fundraiser. So I will be saying more about that in the future. SAG, or not SAG, but it's a SAG. I won't be able to be here the next couple of weeks because of work commitments. But on the 25th, I'm getting my other knee done. So then I won't be here for a few more weeks because of my knee. I'll be sitting with my knee up on ice with my painkillers while you guys are having Rotary. So that's it. Yeah, that's true. I can do that. Is anybody able to help with the table next week? Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Greg?
My bag is
trip to see my daughter in Arizona. And once we get out there, we don't really have to come home. But we'll be home sometime late February. So we're taking off for that, and I will be golfing in the city with the sun.
You have your leg up on it. Watching videos, right? You too.
Sorry, I went to,
Okay, Gary? Yep.
so, I'm going away too. I'm gonna be thinking of Randy also, but I'll be in Florida for 6 weeks. So.
Yeah, okay. Bill?
I have a bit of sag. It's really an apology. This morning I managed to knock the coffee pot over on the wall. And so our speaker, not only does he wind up full of coffee on his notes, but he did a great job with the presentation. Well, there's a brag. I need to name myself.
So, when I started saying, I got a baptism here.
Anybody else? Okay, so I think, do we have a raffle? We do, we do.
We had limited tickets. And I'll tell you, everybody this story. I bought tickets one year, the other day, looked in my car. My wife got stuck in Headings. And I had to go pick her up and left my car there, took her card. I had her here. The tickets are in the car at Headings. If anybody wants to do a 50-50.
That's your wife's fault.
It's my wife. It's always my fault. All right, I have our guest here. Picking out a ticket.
On the bottom. All right.
All right, number is, there's 4 digits, 9970. 9970.
9970.
Oh,
Yay.
See now? Did I call it or what?
Let me see it. All right. I have a mimeograph page written by J. Henry Smith. Make respect this parliament. And he wrote this Winston Township.
We're one step closer to the green tea. Okay, any final comments for this week? Okay, you know, as we go out, I know there's a lot of hunters in the group. We're enjoying hopefully some success this year. You know, on this day, 1847, Samuel Colt sold his first revolvers to the US government. And these were, so that was 1847. He patented the revolver in 1836. So as we leave today, as the fog clears, when we see our friends and neighbors in the community, we are going to simply talk about Rotary today. Have a great week, everyone, and I'll see you next week.